I was chatting to a fellow keyboard player and musical instrument salesman the other day, and we were discussing the fact that there's nothing really that exciting being produced by the keyboard manufacturers at the moment. Sure, there's some excellent high-quality machines being built today. There's nothing really new. For me, it feels like they're just repackaging older machines. When I think back to the 80s and 90s, the Roland Jupiter 4, the Juno 60 with its fresh polyphonic sound. I think of the Yamaha DX7 that came out in 1983, I think, with its ability to capture those mallet and bell sounds. I think of the Roland D50 in 87 with those breathy crystal sounds. I think of the samplers like the Roland S50 that were finally able to capture very real sounds by recording audio samples. I think of the Korg M1, the Korg wave station, with its evolving sounds. We think of analog. We think of subtractive synthesis. We think of additive synthesis. We think of FM synthesis. We think of LA synthesis. Doesn't seem like there's anything new happening. It's just regurgitating all the old stuff in different size packages, smaller packages, packages with more bells and whistles and lights, but nothing intrinsically new. So I don't know what my next synthesizer is going to be. It may be worth discussing the difference between synthesizers and other keyboard products at this point, just for clarity.
A synthesizer is an electronic device that usually involves an electronically generated sine wave, which is then electronically filtered and manipulated to create unique sounds, both musical and otherwise. Although synthesizers have evolved greatly and there are many types of synthesis these days, they were never intended to emulate real-world sounds like pianos and organs and trumpets and strings and brass, even though they may replace those sounds in various musical arrangements. Nowadays, there are plenty of keyboards and musical instruments that do emulate real-world sounds very well. As digital nonlinear recording technology improved, the sampler was born, where sounds could be sampled from the real world and reproduced and played from a keyboard. We call these instruments samplers. The audio recording samples were generally stored on disks. As read-only memory, or what we call ROM, became more accessible and capable of storing larger amounts of data, musical instruments were developed where real-world samples were stored in the read-only memory of the device. And so keyboards that could play really realistic strings and pianos and organs and trumpets became the order of the day. We call these machines romplers. Generally, with the exception of analog synthesizers, sampling technology is used in all kinds of keyboards today. Stage pianos or digital pianos, stage organs are generally all sample-based. But we do need to differentiate between synthesizers, digital pianos, romplers, organs, and other kinds of keyboards.
One thing I'm extremely aware of when selecting a new keyboard or even a VST plugin, I want to maintain some level of individuality. This is very important to me. Let's face it, these days we really are spoiled for choice. My inbox and my newsfeed are full of offers of new toys, and many of them for free. I'm extremely careful to navigate away from the overly popular. I really don't want to be using what everybody else is using. I prefer to curate my own individual and unique collection of sounds, textures and options. I think it's worth keeping a handle on what you use and to be circumspect about not having too many options.
How many keyboards or synthesizers are too many? I'm not sure one can have too many synthesizers. Seriously though, there is a case for having more than one would apparently need. You may ask, why so many keyboards? But the truth of the matter is that often very different instruments are required for creative work in the studio as opposed to live performance work. So apart from my beautiful Bechstein upright piano, of the 10 keyboards I own, there are 4 that I use for my creative work in the recording studio. There are 3 that I take on stage with me for gigs. And there are another 3 which are collector's items, all of which I've received as gifts from friends over time.
So if you were me, what synthesizer would you be looking at next? A Korg Kronos, a Korg Nautilus, a Roland Phantom, a Roland Jupiter X, a Moog, an Oberheim, a Sequential Circuits, a Yamaha MODX Montage or Motif? Would you be looking at more boutique or modular synthesizers? Would you be looking at a one-size-fits-all workstation? Would you just be looking for more VSTi plugins? What would it be?
So let's take a look at what's out there. Or more importantly, which new synthesizers have piqued my interest and curiosity in April 2022. Firstly, the Behringer DeepMind 6 and 12. The Behringer controversy rages on. There are many haters out there. I'm not one of them. I appreciate that Behringer have made it possible for the less privileged in the world to get their hands on usable creative tools that are affordable. Moogs and Profits are simply too expensive for musicians in third world nations, for example, and most regular working musicians anywhere, actually. The DeepMind synthesizers, though not clones, are apparently a nod to the Roland Juno 60 and Juno 106. The demos I've heard sound pretty decent, and they have a nice solid look to them. I think I could have fun fiddling and creating synth pads, basses and leads on one of these. Number 2, the Roland Jupiter X. In many ways, I fantasize about this machine ultimately replacing my JD800. My JD is 31 years old now, and at some point it may finally give up the ghost. It is truly my favorite synth ever, but I know it may not be around forever. The Jupiter X looks like a logical progression from the JD800 for me. Of course, it's an expensive machine, and I would need to start earnestly saving to be able to afford one even in a couple of years' time. Funnily enough, the Roland Phantom series does not intrigue me in the same way. I'm sure they're amazing, but the Jupiter X intrigues me more. Number 3, I have a curious interest in checking out the Korg Volca series. Another range that some folk love to ridicule, maybe because of their low price tag and small size. I know the idea of boutique synths does not appeal to everyone. Maybe it's the fact that these machines do not require a mortgage bond to acquire, but I do enjoy the challenge of using bare bones and bargain basement tools to create something aesthetically pleasing. While on the subject of boutique synths, I would love to play with the Roland SE02 or D05 and the newly released JD08 for obvious reasons and the JX08 modules. My other Korg curiosity is the Micro Korg. This seems to be a very popular keyboard. Maybe this is also to satisfy my quest to prove that one does not need the most expensive equipment to make the best music. I also often wonder where all the old synthesizers have gone. I'm often tempted to put out feelers for old Roland D110 and Yamaha TX81Z modules just for fun. I have been asked before, if you could only have one synth or keyboard, what would it be? Frankly, I'm not sure there is one. Maybe the Korg Kronos? I've never actually tried one, but if it's good enough for Jordan Rudess, it should be good enough for me. However, unless I win the lottery or land a Hollywood film score, I cannot even afford to listen to the YouTube demos of these machines. My Nord Electro 5 definitely gives me the best piano sounds by far, and its Hammond organs are also brilliant. But the synth sounds do not even begin to compete with my relatively cheap Juno DI, in my opinion. My JD800 makes the best pads and synth sounds by far, but does not do emulations of pianos and orchestral sounds. In reality, if I was only allowed one instrument, I may well settle for a Steinway Grand. So what synthesizer would you recommend I try next? If you're watching this, I'd love to hear what your ideas are. What floats your boat? What looks good to you?
To be honest, the more I look at what's out there, the more I start thinking that I've actually got more than enough already. Actually, I enjoy the challenge of being creative with a minimal amount of tools at my disposal, rather than too many. Please feel free to add your comments and thoughts in the comments line below, and please subscribe to my channel. Cheers for now.
But wait, there's more. So just as I'm wrapping up this video, the Roland Corporation makes a special announcement. Enter the Roland Juno X. So far she looks and sounds very impressive. Time will tell. Could she be my next synthesizer?